Welcome to the Efivos in Europe podcast, where we explore pressing issues and amplify youth voices. I'm Fotini, your host, and this podcast is recorded under the framework of the Efivos in Europe project, an initiative aimed at increasing knowledge and awareness of EU institutions, policies, and democratic procedures. In each episode, we dive into topics that matter, providing insights, discussion, and empowering the voices of the next generation. Join us as we navigate through the issue that shaped our world. Let's make democracy more accessible, one conversation at a time. In today's episode, we're delving into the heart of one of the very critical issues of our time, refugee education policies. How many refugees continue their studies after school? What are the European guidelines for unaccompanied minors concerning their education? What choices do they have? Stick around as we uncover the impact that this issue has on our today's society.
So today we welcome Mrs. Γκέλυ Αρώνη. She works for the General Secretariat for Vulnerable Persons and Institutional Protection in the Ministry of Migration and Asylum. Also the head of the Units for Integration and Support of Unaccompanied Minors. So my first question is now, what inspired you as a gymnastic to get involved with the integration of migrants?
It's an interesting story because before I became a sports teacher, I was an athlete, and I was a very good athlete when I was younger. So I got an internship to do a master's in New York, and I played for the university, and I was the only white person in my team. But I could not see it because it never occurred to me that I had a different color. But other people did. So I started thinking and looking at the way people differentiated people through their color, and I found it extremely interesting. So I said, when I go back to Greece, I will try and work in a colorful environment. So I came back and I found a school that it was intercultural, and it had children from 30 to 40 different countries every year, speaking tens of different native languages. And I just loved it. I think it just happened.
What message would you like to convey to children through your actions?
That everything is possible if we do not look into differences, but we look for similarities. Differences are only there to make the world richer and more beautiful and more colorful. It would have been extremely boring for everything to be white or black, because life is not white or black. It's all the shades in between.
So, are there any guidelines for EU for handling the refugee education issue? And does Greece follow them?
Well, Mariam, since I know you and I have been at your school, you could also answer this question. Yes, there have been guidelines. There have been guidelines to try to create inclusive democratic schools in all European countries. There is also a guideline that says that the countries should initiate and establish preparatory classes where the native languages are taught. So most of the countries, and Greece is one of them, that does follow the guidelines. We do not always succeed, because the country received great influx of refugees right after a period of a very, very dire financial crisis. So we do have issues, but I believe that we do have a lot of inspiring teachers that not only follow the guidelines, but they're doing their best to include everyone at school.
How the financial situation of minors have affected their educational and integrational progresses?
I think the financial situation of everyone affects their education and their integration, because when you do not have money, you are in a survival mode. And we keep saying that education is a mobility tool, and you should always be in education because it will get you to places. It will make your dreams come true. But many times when families are in very serious financial problems, they need to work, and sometimes children are asked to also work. So that does influence the education. Or in many countries, Greece included, after the age of 16, education is not mandatory. So if a teenager has financial problems, I don't think that he or she will continue and choose education. He or she might be forced to go into the labor market. So I think that the state should always be careful to provide for kids, not just migrants and refugees, because there are a lot of Greek students that are in serious financial problems. So we should be more supportive of them, because unfortunately it does influence education and integration.
What happens with the educational situations for minors after they become adults?
I cannot answer this because there are all types of alternatives. It depends on many things. It depends on the educational achievement of certain minors, because there are students that excel despite the difficulties, so they continue and they enter university. There are students that they cannot continue, so they have to work. For kids that they want to work, again, there are different paths, because they can excel in their work. They can have vocational training and have ambitions and get promotions, and there are other people that will always stay in the same position. So it is an individual thing of what happens to them. From my experience, if we do not support enough, they will go to employment instead of higher education. And unfortunately, many girls will go into becoming mothers and wives, which is fine if this is their choice and if they are old and mature enough to choose it and select it.
How many of the students continue with their studies, and if they stop, what is the reason for that? And is there a way to solve this problem?
If we're talking about refugee students, the percentage is very, very, very low. It's less than 3% that they enter the university and continue in higher education. There are many problems. I believe that the main one is because unaccompanied minors are coming to Greece in a later age. They're already teenagers and they do not speak the language. It's very difficult to catch up in 2 or 3 years with the exams. But migrant students that are born and brought here, they're second generation, or they come at the elementary school, they have the same potential with Greek students. So the percentage is much, much higher, and it depends on individual ambitions, on how much a migrant girl would like to go to university, or how much a refugee child will be allowed and will have the financial security that will allow him or her to go to university instead of working. I think it goes with the previous replies that it depends a lot on the financial situation.
According to your experience, what would you advise a young refugee who wants to stay in Greece and tries to plan their future?
2 things. The first, to learn Greek, because unfortunately Greek is only spoken in Greece, and it's a requirement for a successful and sustainable integration. No matter how much we speak English, like in this podcast, we do it in English, we don't do it in Greek. Still, in order to be integrated, one needs to learn Greek. And the second one is to join initiatives like this amazing project that you're doing with the Network for Children's Rights. I think this is one of the best ways because one of the indicators in integration, apart from the academic achievement and the language, it's the networks that you build in the country. It's the second most important integration indicator. So they should be following your example.
Thank you for your answer. And have you had an idea that you wanted to do, but you haven't had the chance to do it yet?
I was in a focus group with unaccompanied minors, and I asked them, what would you like to do when you grow older? And they told me different things. So one little one turned around and said, what do you want to do when you will become younger? And I loved that question, and I said, well, if I was younger, I would have learned more languages. But being a professional athlete meant that half of my waking hours went to practice. So, yes, this is what I would have done. I would have learned more languages.
Thank you for your answer. What about something you haven't done with unaccompanied minors yet?
There is something that I haven't done yet. We haven't done yet, but we want to work on it, is transition to adulthood. This is a very important, very crucial, and very challenging period because, like in a Network for Children's Rights, when children are children, you do everything. And not only because of the conventions, but also because you think that the children need your protection and your support. The thing is that young adults also need it, because you may have your 18th birthday, but that does not mean that you automatically, from one day to the other after your birthday, you become capable of sustaining yourself and of making money. You still need support. And especially unaccompanied minors that do not have their families, we need to provide for this. And we haven't done this yet because we work for the protection of unaccompanied minors, which means that our mandate ends with their 18th birthday. And for me, they're still kids, and we still need to work with this project until they are smoothly into their 20s. The way I did it with my son. I did not open the door and let him go the day after his 18th birthday.
Do you have a success story that you would like to share with us?
Ali, I think this is also a question that you could be answering together with Maria, because when I came to your school, I came with 3 of our mentors, and our mentors at the General Secretariat are our success stories because they were unaccompanied minors, that when they came, they lived in Moria, and still, because they were determined and resilient and ambitious, they went to school, and they are now at the university, and they're also working with me. So they're not among the children that I work for, they are among the colleagues I work with.
What are the obstacles that stop the participants from participating, and what the kind of sport and physical activities contribute to break the walls?
That's a very good question, a favorite question, a sports one. Well, it's not a matter what sport you play, it's the conditions under which you play the sport. So if you want to contribute to an inclusive democratic society, you should be playing together with native population. So we shouldn't have sports for migrants and sports for Greeks and sports for refugees and sports for men and sports for women. You have to play in an inclusive way. So they get to play together. This is one condition for me. The second condition is that you need to start with cooperative ways of playing sports, not competitive, because a sport can be like a knife. we use the knife to cut bread, but we use a knife to kill. It's exactly the same way with sports. People can become extremely competitive and very selfish, but people can also learn to become team players. So the second condition is to play in a cooperative way. I found out recently that in Scandinavia, young kids are not allowed to play competitive sports. So you will not see a soccer team at the age of 12 or 13. Only cooperative and only co-ed, boys and girls together. And another condition is that people should choose the sport that they would like to play. Because we might be, for example, fans of basketball, and I might have been, which I was, a volleyball player, but I hear that many people want to play cricket. So I have to find a way to provide the sports that they like, not the sports that I want to impose. People should need to be offered choices.
Thanks, Mrs. Aroni, for coming to answer our question.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this insightful journey through the lens of refugee education policies. Your engagement is what makes these conversations impactful. If you found today's episode enlightening, don't miss out on the other podcasts developed under the Efivos in Europe project. Each one offers a unique perspective, covering a spectrum of topics that shape our understanding of the world.